I don't normally do this. I'm typically playing guitar or piano or something on worship. So yeah, good morning everybody. Welcome to Portland, y'all Tennessee folks. Thanks for being here. Man, I threw in a y'all without even thinking about it. Just been chatting with you guys too much. Okay, things that I should mention. Connect cards are in front of you. If you have a prayer request that you want to bring before our church, write that down. We would love to pray for you. Or if you're new, we would love to get to know you so we can reach out if you put your contact information in there. And then kids, you can head on with Emma and Julia to the kids' room upstairs. So follow them out. Yeah, like I said, this is not my normal thing that I do here on a Sunday. I've preached maybe 5 times in my life, and 3 of them have been on worship. Just because I'm usually been the worship guy. And the first one, I was 15 years old, and I did a collab teaching with one of my best friends at the time. And it was at church campout. And so we had our 2 podiums, and he had been in speech class, so he was over on his side, just using his gestures, making use of the full stage area, and I was on the other side, just trembling, gripping the podium, and reading way too fast. And it lasted about 15 minutes, which was probably a mercy on everyone who was there. But yeah, hopefully this one is better. Yeah, all to say, I typically lead worship, and so Dustin and Water and Jeremiah had just asked, hey, can you do a teaching on worship? So here we are. So first off, it's really easy to think about worship as what we just did, singing together on a Sunday morning. But I think probably most of us know that worship is deeper and it's wider than that. So, I am not a Hebrew nerd like some present, but the origin of the word in English is pretty easy to remember. It's literally worth-ship. So, giving worth, ascribing worth. So when we come together on a Sunday to sing, the goal of what we're doing is collectively giving worth to God, acknowledging His worth. When we sing together, we tell ourselves and we tell God how much we value and love Him. But my kind of main question for us today is, do we? I know for myself, there have been many times when I've been in a worship service and I've hardly even thought of the Lord. It's easy to start multitasking during worship. You can sing, but inside be thinking about lunch, or what the people behind me sound like, or what the people in front of me think I sound like, or whatever. And that brings us to our passage. In this chapter of John, Jesus is meeting with a Samaritan woman at a well. They've been talking, and in the course of their conversation, the woman realizes Jesus is a prophet. He has spiritual authority from the Lord. He's shared with her some things about her life that only she would know. And one major disagreement between the Samaritans, or this woman, and the Jews, Jesus was Jewish, was where they should worship God. So Jews thought they should worship God only in Jerusalem, and that was the spot where you could do it. But the Samaritans thought Mount Gerizim was where they should worship. So this woman says this, and we'll start in verse 20. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, Mount Gerizim, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship. And then Jesus said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know. For salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship Him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. So, Jesus says, essentially paraphrasing, so you think you need to worship over here or over there, but no, true worshipers worship in spirit and truth. So that's kind of Bible-y language. So what does it mean, spirit and truth? Well, let's look at worshiping in spirit first. We're going to look at Romans 12, 1 through 2. It says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. To worship in spirit is to give our whole life to God as a living sacrifice. To think of our life as a loving gift to God. And this can feel ethereal or vague, but the most common expression of this is in following his commands, loving God and loving those who are around us, working for the good of those around us, listening to a friend, or serving our family, or helping someone change a flat on the side of the road. So, that's a short intro to worshiping in spirit. We could probably unpack a lot more about that. But what about truth? Well, to worship in truth could also be said as to worship in reality. Worship involves two parties in a relationship, us and God. So to worship in truth is to worship in the reality of who we are and the reality of who he is. So, who we are, God longs for us to worship him without duality or deception. That our worship would be authentic. That our heart, our life, and the worship songs we sing would carry one continuous message: that God is worthy and wonderful and good. God is light, and in him is no darkness at all, and we trust him. So that's who we are. Now, who he is, that we would not be worshiping our own custom-made version of God, that we would admire and love the person he actually is as revealed in Scripture, rather than editing him to fit our preferences or desires. If we worship a customized God, we are ultimately worshiping ourselves and our own preferences. So, spirit and truth. God is seeking those kind of worshipers who, without acting or pretending, give their whole life to him as a loving gift. He longs for us to look at the person he really is and to respond with genuine admiration. That's what it means to worship in spirit and truth. And I wish I could say, like, all right, cool, band, come on up. Just go and do that. Just do that. But sadly, it doesn't come that naturally to us. A little while back, I was working night shift at a homeless shelter, and I would bring in work often to do in the middle of the night while everybody was sleeping. And there was one time where I had, Tim knows, he was there. I had my laptop and I was making the set for a few weeks out. And I was thinking through the songs and praying about what we should sing. And this guy comes up to the table, and he had been sleeping there, and I guess he couldn't sleep, and he just starts telling me his life story, just pouring out his heart. He was showing me this comic strip that he had written. He loved the Lord, but he recognized that he was really like in need of change, and his life had kind of gone off the rails. And honestly, the first reaction of my heart was, bro, I need to finish this worship set. And that persisted for a bit. Thankfully, the Lord was just like I slowly realized, oh my gosh, I am living in duality right now. I am literally preparing a worship set and not worshiping with my heart and my life. So, it is so easy to sing on Sundays, but it is really tough sometimes to worship in spirit and in truth. So what makes it so hard to worship God, like with our whole life? It is so easy to nod and agree and be like, yes, we want to live this kind of life, but we fall so short most of the time. And I would argue it's because we tend to worship or worthship, ascribe worth to, or supreme worth to other things. We worship financial success, or pleasure, or the approval of other people. And why do we worship these things? I would argue that because we think in those things, financial success or the approval of others, we will find the life that we long for. We think we'll find joy or peace or relief from our worrying life. We think that these things will give us the life we want. A good way to find what we worship is to just ask, what do I want? What do you ruminate about? Like dream about? Often we long for things that aren't bad. They're actually good, like security, community. But it's so easy for us to place those things in our imagination as the goal. Like, if we get this, my life is going to be great. The primary thing we value, the primary thing we ascribe worth to, the thing we worship. And these good things become real bad when they're put in that place of supreme worth. And I think we've probably all seen this, if not in our own lives, then in the lives of other people. Like if you put being safe and secure in that primary place of worth, then it's like, it is a stranglehold on life, taking no risks, making sure everyone is always perfectly okay at all times. Think like helicopter moms on steroids. Or making a living, like working and getting paid for it and being able to have a life where you're provided for. Like, that's a good thing. The Lord like thoroughly endorses work. But if that becomes like our main thing, then we will just work ourselves to the bone, accumulating more and more, and ultimately miss out on true life. Or living at peace with others. If that becomes the top thing we prioritize, we can sacrifice anything for the sake of agreement. So whatever we worship, whatever we worship, we give our life to. And we ultimately become a slave to. So what keeps us from worshiping God? Like, why is it so easy for us to look at all the things that get advertised and talked about in the world that we live in? It's so easy for our hearts to worship those things, but it can feel so counterintuitive, or like it's such a lift to worship God sometimes. I would argue that it's due to us not believing that giving our life to God results in joy and peace and in the life we long to live. Jesus said, John 15, 10 through 11, this is kind of one of his final speaking texts in John. Jesus said, "If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full." So my question is do we really believe that? Do we believe that if we followed the commands of Jesus, our lives would be full of joy, overflowing? Or these words from Jesus, John 10:10. "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. Jesus came, that they may have life and have it abundantly." Or this challenge from Jesus, from Matthew 16:25, "For whoever would save his life, preserve his life, will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." Do we really believe that if we worshiped God with our entire life, valued him above every other thing, lost your life for him, do we believe that we would be full of joy, full of peace, satisfied with your life no matter how rich or poor you are, full of deep joy even in the midst of maybe a lot of suffering? I would challenge you to believe God in this, to believe that he is good, that he came that you might have life and joy, that he loves you and desires good things for you. And maybe not the good things that you have in mind, but far better ones. This is not like the praises go up, the blessings come down kind of theology. And this is not God will make you healthy and wealthy if you follow him. But instead, he promises a deeper, richer joy. Jesus said, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments," in John 14:15. And this could sound passive-aggressive or manipulative, like, "Hey, if you love me, you're going to keep my commandments. So I don't see you keeping my commandments. So yikes," that kind of thing. But if we truly believe that someone has good intentions towards us and is infinitely wise, wouldn't we want to keep their instructions? Believing that following their instructions would result in the best outcome, even if their advice didn't make much sense to us at all at the time. If we truly believe that God is good and the source of all that is good, that he desires joy and life for us, then we can follow his commands with willing hearts, placing him in a place of supreme worth and trusting that following him is truly the best way to live. So, we end up worshiping whatever we believe will bring us the life we ache for. And if we don't come to believe that God is truly good and the source of life, we'll be forever worshiping him in obligation rather than in spirit and in truth. And these things are easy to agree with in church, but difficult to believe on an average Tuesday afternoon. And why is that? Well, the world around us doesn't really believe that a life of worship to God is a good idea at all. And maybe in your life right now, there's pain and tragedy that makes it really hard to believe that God is good. And I'm not going to dive into that right now, but we just have to recognize that this often does not come naturally to us. So that is one of the most wonderful things about spiritual disciplines, what we've been talking about for the past several weeks. We can easily hear a sermon and nod and agree and be like, yes, absolutely. But then when we walk out, we can, an hour later, be believing something almost totally different. But if we adopt regular practices like we've been talking about, like silence, prayer, fasting, worship, if we incorporate those into our life, coming back to them again and again, we can start to transform our core beliefs about reality, about what's good, what will lead to goodness, and to start to live in the truth of who God is. If we simply sing songs and listen to a sermon on Sunday, we will not be changed and will ultimately continue to believe the story we hear and observe in the world. And we'll continue giving our lives to lesser things and worshiping them. And they will always betray us. And this is not about just like really putting your best game on, trying really hard to worship God throughout the week. But it's about a continual reorienting of our mind to God and to the truth of who He is. So for me, pretty much every day feels like a battle of which reality I live in, which story I'm going to agree with. And usually it manifests in the simplest of things. And we were talking about this at Sermon Club, but like one example would be, am I going to take time to talk with my grandpa? So I often can most naturally think, man, I've got so much to do today and I haven't gotten around to doing it, and time's running out, and if I don't get to it now, then I never will, and I'll be miserable, and people will think I'm stupid, and then I'm gonna die. And it's like, that's like the subconscious like worldview that makes me just feel like, so anxious sitting there listening to him and hearing whatever he has to say. But I can also, in that moment, believe God. Knowing that the things that are truly the most important is loving God, loving my neighbor. And in that moment, my grandpa is my neighbor. And that losing my life, or 15 minutes of my day, which is pretty low-key, honestly, will actually result in me finding my life, in finding joy. So, what do we do? How do we become those who worship in spirit and in truth? I would invite you to identify what it is that your heart most naturally worships. What do you want? And why do you want it? And usually in that is some kind of like deep lie about what truly brings us joy. And us humans are generally pretty bad about anticipating what will actually bring us joy. So recognizing that lie, recognizing what you want, what you put in that place of supreme worth, and just bring it before the Lord. He forgives our sin. He forgives the lies that we believe. And then just on a more practical, kind of everyday level, I'd invite you to incorporate some of these spiritual disciplines into your life to begin to shape your mind and imagination into seeing the world through the lens of God's reality. All this information we've been talking about on Sundays will not do any good unless we actually do these disciplines. And you don't have to do them all, like, immediately. Just maybe pick one that really interests you, or you think, like, man, I haven't tried that, and I wonder if that might be some deep well. If you are like, wait, what were the disciplines again? Or like, wait, how do I actually do them? We do have a book. Do we still have those in the back somewhere? Yeah? Maybe? Okay.
No, there's more.
All right, there's more. There are more. Yeah, the book we've been kind of following is Celebration of the Disciplines by Richard Foster. Super good. Would highly recommend. There's a lot of depth in that book if you're interested in incorporating some of the disciplines. But one discipline that you have already incorporated into your life today is corporate worship, which is great. In corporate worship, we get to come to God with our mixed up hearts and sing with our mouth the truth we want to believe. We remind ourselves of who God is, why he is good and worthy of our whole life, retuning our hearts and the way we see the world back into alignment with the gospel. Usually it takes me like 2.5 songs, if I'm just like, here, I haven't been at practice and all that, to really come to a place of being like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing right now. But you may find a lot of worship song lyrics are pretty aspirational, like, I surrender all, or you are my everything. And my encouragement to you, like if you run into those kinds of lyrics, is like, let this be a moment where you recognize those things that have been in your life that you put worth on that's maybe not the Lord. Like, for example, there was a line in one of the bridges I think we sang where it's like, you are hope and peace and life. And like, if you find yourself singing that and you recognize, I believe that, or a piece of me believes that, but then there's another piece of me that doesn't believe that, I'd encourage you to not just kind of be like, well, okay, here we are. This is our thing that we do. Just see that and in prayer, bring that before God as like, hey, Lord, like, maybe I haven't been living like you are truly the ultimate source of life, the ultimate source of hope, the ultimate source of joy. Like, bring those things to God. Let this be a time where we sing the truth that we want to believe, realign our hearts, but also recognize our idols, recognize the things that we give worth to, and place in that place of God in our hearts. Well, band, you can go ahead and come on up. And just going to read from Matthew 15:8. And this is Jesus quoting Isaiah. Jesus was warning the people, the religious people of his time, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And we could get fog and lights and a full band and people jumping around in here every Sunday, and that'd be super fun. It'd be super great. But if our hearts and our lives do not worship God, do not place God in a place of supreme worth, then it will be meaningless. I want to worship God in spirit and truth, and I hope you do too. I want to believe that he is good with my whole being. I want to walk through my week obeying the top 2 commands, to love God and to love other people. Not just because like it's the right thing to do, or because I'll get more heavenly coins dropped in my heavenly 401k or whatever, but because I trust that God is actually good, that he made me in his image. And when I resemble God in loving people or giving or serving, I will be fulfilling my humanity, and I will find a life of joy and peace, life to the full, even if things are really hard. And the dream is to come from a week like that, where I actually have God in that place of supreme worth, and then to gather together with others who adore him, who love him, to sing songs together with our whole hearts. And those times of worship in my life has been the sweetest. Like often it looks really simple, just a couple people in a living room or something, people who I know like just super well, who've lived a lot of life with. It's a really glorious thing. But man, I've got a long ways to go in terms of truly worshiping God with my whole life. And I would guess that's probably the story for a lot of us too. I want to believe that God is good, to worship him in spirit and truth, giving all of my life to him as a gift of love. All other gods will destroy us. We have been made to worship him, and only in him will we find life and joy to the full. So we're going to have a time of communion now where we remember one of the clearest moments of God's goodness that we can point to, of God laying down his life for us in sacrifice. So at this time, we go back, grab communion. There's also a gold bowl if you have offerings to give. That's back there as well. So we're going to grab communion, come back to your seat, and at the end of that, Colt's going to lead us in communion.